Some days you can't win no matter what you do or say. Those are the days when you wish you had pulled a sheet over your head and left the house. Being the head of the house, according to your better half, means you have certain responsibilities that sometimes you want to avoid. Mine began the moment I was awakened by the police department at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning to inform me that my bar had been broken into. I quickly got dressed and sprinted out the door, ready to jump in my Ford, only to discover that I had a flat tire. It didn't help that I had only gotten about 4 hours of sleep. In a hurry, I grabbed my wife's company car since it was Saturday and hit the road. Unfortunately for me, since the cash was locked in the safe, they took most of the alcohol supply at the bar. One of the officers said someone had gotten a huge new stock of top-grade bootleggers. They damaged the front entrance by driving a car through it. By my rough estimate, it should be at least 2 weeks before I can open the store. The police booked it as a burglary. After the insurance agent came and took pictures, I boarded up the place. Now I had to wait for the insurance agent to arrive so I could start repairing the main entrance. Fortunately, the retail losses would be covered by insurance until I could reopen. Around lunchtime, I was about to get into my wife's car to head home when I heard a voice yelling, "Melody, wait!" I turned in the direction the male voice was coming from, and the man running towards me froze in place. When I looked at him, he muttered, "Oh, sorry, I got the wrong car," and quickly walked away. Back home, I described the man in detail to my wife Melody, but she never seemed to guess who it might have been. Melody asked me why I was in such a hurry early in the morning that I had to take her car. I replied that the bar had been broken into and the police had called me to the scene. After taking a quick bite of a sandwich, I got out of my car, changed a tire on my truck, and went to get it fixed. It turned out to be a burst valve stem. Before heading home, I stopped along the way to buy 2 new pairs of blue jeans, a pack of Hanes t-shirts, and a MAGA hat. When I returned, I found a note from Melody saying she had gone shopping. I usually worked Friday and Saturday evenings because that's when we had the most work to do. This meant that by the time I got home, it was already morning. I shaved off my beard for the first time in 12 years, then showered and got ready to hit the road as usual. Except I hadn't brushed my hair. Its natural locks were scattered everywhere. As a result, I had changed my appearance so much that I almost didn't recognize myself. I was going to put the night to good use and check out the other establishments in town. I headed to the bar at my usual time, as if nothing had changed, since Melody still hadn't returned. Entering the bar through the back door, I grabbed my new clothes and changed into them. To complete my new look, I grabbed an old pair of reading glasses that one of my coworkers had left behind. Clean-shaven, I looked much younger. With black-rimmed glasses, I could pass for a university dork. Then it occurred to me that everyone knew my truck, so I called a cab to pick me up and take me to National Car Rental. I chose a white, medium-sized, unmarked white Ford. I headed to the north side of town, heading south. Walking into a restaurant, I ordered a beer and began researching how well-trained the staff was, learning the location, decor, customers, and prices. I was learning a lot of little things that might come in handy when starting my own business. After getting the information I needed, I would leave, often leaving behind a full mug of beer. It was at the 7th establishment, located along the Mississippi River, in a poor part of town where university students hung out, that I discovered something that changed my whole world. I was just walking through the front doors of the new City Jack when I saw her. My wife Melody was on the dance floor with a man who was not me. For a slow dance, they seemed to be dancing pretty damn tight. My first inclination was to do some serious physical damage to him, because this was the same man who ran up to me during lunch calling her by name. This clearly indicated that my loving wife was lying to me. Melody was wearing a tight outfit like I had never seen before. It was so see-through that you could see the lines of the dark thong. Her blouse was half unbuttoned and everyone could see her full cleavage. Being a bartender, I knew that appearances could be deceiving. I started to look for a seat to watch her when a guy shouted to me through the loud music, "There's a seat here if you agree to buy a table." He was surprised that I took him up on his offer and asked the waitress to bring me a double gin and tonic. I found out it was a group of regulars. I said I was just passing through and stopped for the night. I asked if they were always this busy. On weekends, yes, because there are a lot of students here. As the evening progressed, I casually asked who the lady was, dressed in matching white, almost see-through pants and a slit blouse. I was asked why I was interested in this. I replied that she seemed to flaunt her sexuality a lot, as if she was looking for someone new. She does that a lot, was the reply. Melody Corbett is her name, and this is her boss, Payne Richards. I asked what's their story, are they friends with benefits? The general consensus is that he's single and she's complicated, but they're regulars here and have been known to be together all the time. The red-headed girl sitting across from me said they come here every Friday and Saturday night since her husband works out of town. The only thing I learned beyond that was that one of the other girls at the table said they always come in her car. Before the band started their last set, I thanked her for letting me join them. I treated one of them to another cocktail and then said goodnight. Slipping outside, I quickly found her car and had already let the air out of all her tires when I was caught by a pretty red-headed girl sitting at a table. You didn't know, did you, Caleb? The redhead said. My name is Carrie Ann, by the way, and I work with them. Everyone at this table does too. How did you know who I was? I asked. I didn't. I just realized from the look on your face that you'd been holding yourself back all evening. Even though you tried not to, your eyes followed her too often. It wasn't until I saw you let the air out of her tires that everything fell into place. The questions you asked earlier made me think, what would be the first thing I would do if I were her husband who had just found out about this? Carrie said. So here I am to find out if I'm right. You don't work on oil rigs, do you? Perhaps when you're done, we should talk. To be fair, the white Ford Tarsus in the corner labeled For Hire is my car. The bar on Bethia Street is closed because it got trashed this morning, said I. Melody thinks I still work there. I used this night to check out the competition, and I've been going around to different bars all night checking them out. Here are the keys. Sit down. I really don't want you to get caught if someone else catches me. You work at Batia's on Baitia. The place has a great reputation. She replied, took her keys and left. As soon as I was done, I joined her. Carrie was sitting in the driver's seat starting the car. I was lucky no one else got out. Where do you want to go? Carrie asked. Someplace where we won't be disturbed or overheard, I replied. To my house, plus I need a ride, Carrie said with a smile. It was a 20-minute drive to her modular home outside of town. I was surprised to see a car in the driveway. That's my car, Susan. Susan, the brunette sitting with us, took my hand and we drove together. It's easier to brush off unwanted attention if you say you're here with a friend. She said. I texted her and told her I was taking a cab home. It was a beautiful house that looked like new because apparently it had hardly been used. She brought us each a couple beers and we started talking. Carrie Ann, thanks for catching me. I don't know what else I would have done if I had stayed, I said. You made me realize that I may have been overreacting. That's not true. Payne has rooms available for a month at the Ramada Hotel on 4th. If you check them out, you'll find that the two of them go there right after closing time, Carrie Ann explained. She comes in with a shopping bag wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, and when she goes out with him, she's in dressy clothes. After they got back about 2 or 3 hours later, she came out of the restaurant freshly washed, wearing the same blue jeans and carrying the same shopping bag in her hands. How do you know all this? I asked. My brother is one of the night managers. He works Wednesday through Sunday. According to him, they've been lovers for over a year, Carrie said. It was Melody who told him that you work on the oil rigs and can be away for up to 6 months at a time. As a result, he was under the impression that you were a married couple in an open relationship. Apparently, she saw the shock on my face because she said, Oh shit, you had no idea about anything at all. No, I haven't. The first problem is how do I get proof, I said. The second problem is that her parents are backing my bar. I still owe them about $20,000. Let me talk to my brother and see what I can do on his end. They might have a videotape of her going in and out of the room. Also, she could get her own keycard to his room, Carrie suggested. I'll see him at our parents' house next Friday afternoon because it's my parents' anniversary. We exchanged contact information before I left. I wanted to see what happened when they discovered she had a flat tire. It would help me decide if what Carrie had told me was true. I got back to the bar just before closing time, glad there was enough light in the parking lot before the bar closed. It was a few minutes before Melody and Payne walked out of the building, holding hands and sneaking kisses as they walked to her car. I noticed that he pulled his keys out of his pocket to open the passenger door for her. At this point, they noticed a flat tire. As they approached the trunk, he noticed a second one. Melody ran around the other side of the car, discovering that all the tires were flat. I wasn't close enough to hear what they were talking about, but I saw enough to know that they were acting like a married couple would in this situation. It said a lot about how long their relationship had lasted. It wasn't just a flash in the pants. He pulled out his cell phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a tow truck with an air generator showed up and inflated the tires. I watched as he drove them back to the Ramada Inn on 4th. Just as Carrie explained that I should be home, Melody came out with her hair still damp, wearing blue jeans and carrying a large shopping bag from Macy's. It's hard for a man to realize that the woman who swore in her marriage vows to love only him has willingly and eagerly turned into someone else's whore. I know I just learned this firsthand. I headed back to return the car. They called me a cab so I could pick up my truck. By the time I got back to my driveway, it was 5 in the morning. I fell asleep on the couch in the family room downstairs, dressed the same way I was when I left for work. The next day, she didn't even realize her secret was out. Mel and I met when I talked her into helping a buddy out by organizing a last-minute double date. Mel's family was visiting cousins and he couldn't go on the date without her accompanying him. As soon as I saw her with her shoulder-length black hair that seemed to draw you in along with her blue eyes, I was interested. You could tell she had Betty Davis eyes because when she looked at you, it seemed like she was looking right into your soul. I was soon overwhelmed. Even without makeup because her father, a strict man, wouldn't allow it. She won me over. I ended up going to see her every weekend for 2 hours until I graduated against my old man's wishes. I guess you could say my persistence wore him down. She went to college and I didn't. I worked and took business courses online. Her sophomore year, she got an engagement ring. The next summer, the bar went up for sale. Her dad and I went in there for a couple after he brought in his wooden craft. I said whoever bought it would have to gut it. It was too dark and old. He said that's what was needed, and I spent an hour explaining to him what was needed and why. He ended up lending me money from his retirement fund at 6% interest and even helped me gut the house. I described the new project in detail. We built it together, which saved considerable labor costs. In 10 years of owning the house, I had reduced the loan amount from $200,000 to just under $20,000. It was now worth twice that. For a man like him, keeping his word was very important. At this time, Melody's parents insisted that we start a family. I was more than ready, but she wasn't. Now I understood why Melody wasn't ready. In her eyes, as far as I could tell, I wasn't good enough to be the father of her children. On Monday, I went to the bank, applied for a commercial loan, and got an overdraft. The bank agreed to it if I paid off my father-in-law. By Wednesday, everything was ready. When I handed Melody's father the last payment, he handed it back to me signed, "If you recall, you gave me the rights to the design of the bar you created, but not the name." My retiree sold the plan 6 times, and as a result, I more than doubled my initial investment in you. He then wrote out a letter stating that the last payment on the mortgage I had gotten was paid in full. The next day, I went to the bank again and paid off the loan, leaving only the unsecured overdraft. The renovations and some of the changes I had in mind were going according to plan, but my wife, with her head up her ass, still didn't understand what was going on. It was becoming obvious to me that she was oblivious to what was right in front of her, including me, as her thoughts were preoccupied with other things. Friday evening, I arrived at my wife and her lover's favorite place, having changed into the same disguise I had worn the week before. With Ami du Chambertin cheese brought from France, I plugged the tailpipe of her patrol car, shoving it so that it couldn't be seen unless you looked directly into it. Her pungent odor was worse than a huge pig yard. As he wandered around exposed to the heat, it grew worse. Before heading to their favorite bar, I found his company car parked outside the hotel, and after pouring a 2-pound bag of sugar into the gas tank, I removed the valves from the stems. Soon I was sitting with their coworkers again, watching them continue to flaunt their sexual relationship. They were so engrossed in each other that they paid no attention to anything or anyone around them. At times they got so heated that just watching them made people hot. Carrie Ann tried to stay close to me. She even refused all requests to dance. At times, seeing me tense up, Carrie would take my hand, urging me to stay calm. I slipped the bartender a $100 bill with my email address written on it to get his attention, and after changing, I walked past the bar to the men's room. As I was returning to my seat, he asked me to explain. I told him that the most erotic video clip sent to this email account of Melody and Payne by the end of the month would earn him and the announced winner 500 cash each. The only rule is they can't find out about it or the contest is canceled. He asked why I wanted to do this. I pulled out my wallet and said, "It's for your eyes only." He looked at my ID. Smiling broadly, he nodded his head. "This is going to be fun," he said. "I'm married, and I'd love to help you burn that cheating bitch." He invited me to come closer so I could whisper. "I know how to get the spanking fly," he said. "I think next weekend, Saturday, we'll have a special unlicensed after-hours party." I replied, "That would be perfect since the bar reopens next Thursday." And I was at home pretending to be asleep when at 3 in the morning, Melody slipped quietly, like a mouse, to my door. I could hear her having a long conversation with someone on the phone. Finally, she crawled over to me. That Saturday morning, I got up earlier than she did. Since she didn't have a lock on her cell phone, I went through her phone records. She had been talking to Payne when she found out I was home. She had also forgotten to erase her messages. One of them I found interesting was addressed to her older sister. It said, "Sis, I need support for last night. I'm going to tell Caleb I was with you last night." Using my cell phone, I took a picture. Sure enough, later that day, I got an explanation that she had gone to visit her sister and brother-in-law. The following Tuesday, Carrie Ann Lasher texted me, "Can we meet?" I replied that I was at a truck stop off the highway. "I'll be there in a half hour." She replied that she would see me there. Carrie Ann was waiting for me when I arrived. I don't think I have ever seen a nicer smile in my life. I was starting to grow a mustache and a goatee. She took a picture of me on her cell phone so she would have my image for her contact information. Carrie remarked that she liked the way I looked on it. Unfortunately, Melody still hadn't noticed the change in my appearance. "Hi, Red," I said, sitting down. "You look really happy." "I'm Caleb," she replied. "You'll be happy too when you study the information my brother planted on me this morning. The only problem is that he wants you to cover his printing and copying costs. The owners used to charge him 20 cents a sheet when they printed something for personal use. The waitress came over and I ordered a big breakfast for the day. 3 eggs, 3 slices of toast, sausage and bacon. Carrie ordered a cheese omelet. We both ordered orange juice and coffee. From the information, we learned that Melody had had her own keycard to his room for over 6 months. He copied it every time it was used. The image showed that during that time, she had regularly used the card 4 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 o'clock in the evening. I showed Carrie the resulting image of my wife's message to her sister. "So what are you going to do with it?" Carrie asked. Asked Carrie. Asked Carrie. Asked Carrie. Asked Carrie. Asked Carrie. "Are you going to get a divorce?" There's a special party next Saturday for Melody and Payne. I hope they send me a bunch of videotapes because it's going to be wild. Once I have them, I'll gather all the information and show it to her father to explain why she doesn't want my kids. At the same time, she will be served with a divorce petition in their hotel room. I've made sure that this will be videotaped as well. "When you put the packet of papers together, email it to me, please," Carrie asked. "Why?" I asked. "Payne's corporate car is out of service and is a complete write-off," Carrie said. "Carrie's car gives off such a foul odor that they may be forced to do the same thing to it. I'd like to suggest to our corporation that an angry husband may be to blame." "When do you want to send him?" asked I, trying to hide my glee. "Maybe the same time you're going to serve it?" Carrie giggled. "And can I use your name?" I was confused and burst into a rumble of laughter. "Damn, you can be a real asshole." Carrie laughed. "Damn, I just realized you did. Why don't you tell me how and when?" "I did it perfectly," I said with a wink. "I'm a gentleman, and I'll never tell." We ordered the medication through our supplier. I called a friend after getting a picture of her birth control pills and ordered a year's supply of sugar pills that mimicked the ones she was taking. He, because he was a pharmacist, was able to duplicate everything, including the labeling. On Wednesday, I had them on hand. By the time she got home from work, I had already switched them. Now all that was left was to buy time. Bad luck helped me that evening when an idiot ran a red light on the way to work and hit me so hard in the side that he drove into cars standing at the light. My truck was totaled. Had to cut me out with the jaws of life. I was taken by ambulance to the hospital to be checked out. My wife Melody and her parents met me. After 6 hours of examination, I was finally discharged. The doctors prescribed at least 2 days before I could return to normal life. No driving for a week, he said, to give my broken bones time to heal. After that, a month of light duty. That meant Melody stayed home, looking after me after work. By Saturday, she was starting to worry. I smiled, knowing she hadn't taken her pills in 3 days. I told her I wasn't going to rest anymore. Out of the blue, I asked if she could drive me to the bar and pick me up when I called her after closing. She readily agreed. While I was showering and getting dressed, I heard her talking on her cell phone, making arrangements for a night out. She dropped me off. I told my staff that I wasn't working, but just wanted to spend the night to see if the changes I had instituted were working. The cook I hired was great. Our sales before the concert doubled, and for a Saturday, that says a lot. The place was sold out. Since opening, we started getting a lot of lunch customers coming in because of the daily specials we were promoting. The food complemented the theme of the bar. Every night, the restaurant closed at 8 o'clock. You could always get pickled eggs or sausages afterward. This was an elderly gentleman who wanted to get home early. His problem was that he had retired too early, and staying home with his wife was driving him crazy. When he first suggested the idea to me, I brushed it off until I checked out other bars. He ordered the food, set the prices, and told me that in addition to his salary, I would have to pay him 10% of the gross profit. We worked together to set it up. We set up his cramped little kitchen the way he wanted it. Everything he cooked was made from scratch. Shepherd's pie and Irish stew were automatically popular, but he had his own twist that put them an order of magnitude above other dishes I had tried. This caused our big bar and my office to go under. We had to hire new staff for the kitchen, which he hand-selected. So far, the feedback has been most positive. It was about 8:30 in the evening when I saw her walk in with her friend Susan. Carrie Ann Laser looked amazing. As soon as she saw me, a big smile appeared on her face. At 9 p.m., we had a three-piece band playing light folk songs and a few Irish standards. On a good night, the dance floor was half full. They sat at a table for 8. Carrie Ann was dressed in Irish colors. Her blouse and pleated skirt complemented each other perfectly. Seeing a natural red-headed woman in green was amazing. She radiated sexiness and class. One of my waitresses said she was an attention getter. I agreed as I prepared a couple of specialty drinks for them. I held them out to them myself, saying, "Compliments of the establishment." "Caleb," Carrie Ann said, as if it was important. "You remembered what we like, thank you." "Caleb, this is my dear friend Susan." I extended my hand in a friendly manner. Susan took it, then said she would be right back. I went behind the bar and got myself a large glass of ginger ale. I promised myself that I would never drink in my own bar. I had kept that promise for 10 years, and I wasn't about to start now. Taking the glass, I walked back to the table and sat down across from Carrie Ann. Carrie got up and sat next to me. Susan didn't look surprised. "I'll take this seat early," Carrie Ann announced, before the rest of the team arrives. "Susan Caleb is Melody's ex-husband." "You're not kidding, are you?" Susan replied, surprised. "No, he's not kidding," I replied. "That first night you all met me, I was checking out what was on offer in town because this bar was closed for renovations. I was in complete shock when I was invited to sit at your table. Later, Carrie caught me doing something on the street that I shouldn't have been doing. After I told her about my behavior, I ended up giving her a ride home. We've been friends ever since." "He had no idea what his wife was doing while he was at work," Carrie Ann explained. "That's why we're here today. I wanted to make sure he wasn't alone." "But why exactly Baitia on Baitia?" Susan asked. "This place has a reputation for being upscale." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment, although when I designed the bar that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to have a nice enough place where I could bring my girlfriend." "Susan," Carrie said, "Caleb not only built this bar, he owns it." Carrie and I noticed Susan's surprised look. Soon the establishment began to fill up. When the rest of the crew arrived, the table was filled to capacity. Carrie Ann and Susan kept me on the dance floor most of the night. My staff was glad that I was enjoying myself for once. It was noted that the dance floor had never been so full. I was surprised when everyone agreed that the volume of the orchestra was just right. It was loud enough that you could hear your thoughts. The staff noted that it was more crowded than usual for a Saturday night. After the bar closed, I asked Carrie Ann to drive me home. She and Susan did so. That's when she told me that most of the crew agreed that this place was a much better place to hang out, since it wasn't geared toward the university singles crowd. I was glad, as word of mouth had just expanded my clientele. Waking up late Sunday morning after 8 hours of sleep, I found that Melody wasn't home. This didn't surprise me. I figured that if everything had gone according to plan, she wouldn't have gotten back in time. I spent the next 2 hours being a very concerned husband. I called every family member looking for her, and I didn't hide my worry as all my calls to her went to voicemail. I called Carrie Ann and told her what was going on. She decided that my calling everyone was a smart decision on my part. While she and I were talking, I got another call. I told her I would call her back. It was my father-in-law. "Hi, Dad," I said. "I'm sorry I haven't heard anything since I talked to you this morning." "I thought so, Caleb. That's why I'm calling." Mary and I decided to come to the Ramada Inn on 4th for Sunday brunch. Now we wish we hadn't because we found Melody's car parked there. "I don't know what to tell you, Dad. I haven't had my car replaced yet and I still can't drive. There's no way I can make it. So go enjoy your lunch and I'll talk to you later." I replied in a concerned tone. My father-in-law was a strict man who lived and died by his own standards and principles. In his opinion, there was too much gray in the world. Everything had to be black or white. He didn't want to watch Anderson Cooper because how could anyone take anything Tinkerbell said as truth? He couldn't understand that the basic truths he was raised on no longer existed in our society. He was surprised that a man my age didn't have tattoos on his body. I replied that I have a lot of respect for myself, so I refuse to follow the masses. Most of those who put tattoos on their body regret it later. Just because people have chosen to live their lives as they see fit does not make them right in my eyes. Our society has become so self-centered that we have stopped caring about our neighbors. One evening, we got into a heated argument about law and order and their decline. I said that people still look to our government as an example of how we should behave, and look what they are doing. One side says we should follow the law, the other side says we should break it. One side promotes a lack of responsibility, the other side demands responsibility. The word racist has been changed by one political party to mean that regardless of color, religion, or heritage, you are a racist if you don't promote and accept their views as if they were the gospel of Jesus Christ. If Hitler were alive, I added, he would claim they followed him in his early years. In their eyes, you and I are just a minority compared to them and their followers who are too stupid to follow their doctrines. If you argue with them or oppose their wishes, you are branded as a racist, harassed, and attacked. Now they show up in Democrat-controlled cities wearing masks, promoting their form of social justice against people like us. The only opinion they want to hear is their beliefs coming out of your mouth. Unfortunately, the leadership says the situation will be investigated and charges will be filed, but we both know that will never happen. Equal justice for all is a thing of the past. He agreed that before it gets better, it will get worse. This is exactly what Hitler and his followers did before they came to power. We who study history to learn see our great country repeating history. It is sad that one party had to bring this kind of culture back to America and make it normal again. It was these same views that led to the first Civil War in the United States of America. At times I had to wonder if we were headed for the second one. Dad, I finished. Whether we like it or not, this is the reality of the world we live in now. If Dad catches Melody with her lover, she'll be lucky to escape his wrath with her life intact. I texted him that this wasn't the first time she'd gone somewhere without my knowledge, and attached an image of her text message to her sister. I called Carrie back to let her know what my father-in-law had discovered, as well as what I had just done. She laughed and then asked what I was doing. I replied that other than smiling, it was nothing much. "Do you want me to pick you up so we can do something?" she asked. I honestly said I'd love to, but it's probably best not to disappear. They'd worry, and I think they already have a lot to worry about at the moment. It was about 6 in the evening. I was sitting in the kitchen eating delivered pizza when I heard a car pull up to the driveway. Looking out the window, I saw that it was Melody's dad, and he was alone. I watched him get out of the car. He looked like a broken man. I went and let him into the house and then pulled out a bottle of Marker's whiskey to pour us a nice stiff drink. Taking a clean plate, I told him to eat a slice of pizza. Caleb, it's bad. I was at home when I called you. Your message got me thinking, and I went to talk to Mandy first because I wanted to make sure my thoughts were right, he said. I asked the day manager of the hotel to call the night manager early. I went back. It turned out that the affair with Melody had been going on for over 6 months. Mandy, her older sister, had accidentally found out about it herself and promised to keep it a secret because Melody explained that she wanted to experience the wild single life before settling down and raising children. I pretended to be shocked, but partly I was because I hadn't expected Mandy to be honest about it. I was about to leave when Melody came out of the elevator holding his hand. He had a huge smile, like he was proud of his latest conquest. I was at a loss. The night manager and the day manager had to pull me away from him, he said. I came here because I think this will be the last place the cops will look for me. Dad, the first thing I'm going to do is call Mom to let her know you're okay, I said. Then I'm going to call the manager of the Ramada Inn to see if Melody's lover is going to press charges. My mother-in-law was devastated but was grateful that her husband had come to see me. Melody called her to apologize. My mother asked for what? For getting caught? For creating a situation that could land your father in jail? For having an affair? Or for what we found out? Your apology means nothing. What about Caleb, about your marriage? You're just hoping we can help you out of this mess you made for yourself. Then she hung up. I told her if I heard anything else, I'd tell her, and she thanked me. I called Jason Lasher and introduced myself. I told him I still owed him $5. He laughed. Did my sister tell you that? I said yes more than once. She never forgets anything, he said. So if you want, you can pay me to do it in front of her. I asked, why? It will save us both a lot of heartache. She, like our mother, clings to everything like a dog to a bone. She needs to see it before she lets go. I laughed and told him I could take it as long as I knew. Then he told me I think she has a crush on you. If you are not interested, let her go. I replied that I am still married. Until I get this over with, I'm not making any decisions about my life. I promise you, Jason, that I will be careful not to take her where I am not ready to go myself. I then told him that my father-in-law was with me, and I needed to know if the police had been called. He informed me that they hadn't and that Melody had convinced Payne not to press charges even though he wanted to at first. I thanked Jason. I told my dad the good news and then relayed it to my mom. There was a look of relief on his face. Caleb, what are you going to do about this mess? He asked anxiously. I pulled out my cell phone and prepared a message for Melody. I showed it to her father. It read, Dad just told me about everything. Congratulations, you should feel proud. You threw away parental guidance, ruined our marriage, and tore my soul apart in just one day. Don't be sad. Be happy. You got what you wanted. Don't come home. The Melody I knew doesn't live here anymore. If you send this to your father, my marriage will end right now. If not, it will slowly die for another 6 months, I said in complete sincerity. Once trust is broken, there's no getting it back. Let's give this dead marriage a quick and honorable death, he said, hitting the send button. Mary always said that Melody married her father. This just proves she was right. After we were done with the pizza and drinks, we went to Lumberland's and bought locks for the 3 doors and deadbolts. Once we had them installed, the rest of the family drove up to us. Mandy's mom, her husband Jack, and the adorable kittens. They ended up leaving around 10. I texted Carrie Ann, "Are you awake?" She replied very quickly. "You're fine. I have to ask because Jason called and told me what happened," Carrie asked. Payne has 2 black eyes and a broken nose. Your father-in-law really jumped him, but he only managed to land 3 punches before Jason helped him stop. I laughed but replied, "He used to do amateur boxing when he was younger. I'd like to see that," I said. "He came here after everything happened. He didn't know where to go. I found out from your brother that no charges had been filed and informed the family. They all happened to be here to discuss what happened and had already left." "What about Melody?" Carrie asked. I explained that my father-in-law had asked the same question. I explained what Melody had written in the message. I asked him to read the message, to which he replied, "Let's give this noble a death sentence," and press send. Your father-in-law sent the message for you. That's unrealistic. There wasn't a forgive her, give her a second chance dance, Carrie stated. No, in his eyes she violated trust. And there's no getting him back. He still sees everything as black or white. She made her bed and let her live in it. To hell with the consequences. In this situation, I agree with him, I stated. He even helped me change the locks on the doors. Any news on what happened last night? Carrie Ann asked. No, I haven't checked yet. I've been too busy. I laughed. I guess it doesn't matter anymore, although I'll keep my word. Give it until Monday night, Carrie replied. From what I've heard, that might surprise you. Why? I asked. Rumor has it that the bartender at New City Jack's used to be in adult movies. Carrie giggled. If that's true, it wouldn't surprise me in the least that he didn't take advantage of the situation. Are you serious? I asked. Yes, seriously. Carrie replied. What I want to know is, when do I have an official first date, Caleb? How about the day Melody is served? I said with a smile. I'll even have her served at the office. It's a deal if you send me red roses ahead of time that day. I want to be able to rub her nose in the fact that she's violating my notions of fidelity, Carrie said. It's going to be very interesting at work tomorrow. I hung up the phone and thought about what I knew about Carrie Ann. She was about 24, unmarried, and very good-looking. About 5 feet 8 inches tall. Although she wasn't overly slender, she wasn't fat either. My grandfather, looking at her hips, would have said she was a good breeding animal. To him, that meant she would have a great life. She worked in the same regional office of the dental company as Melody and her lover, but she wasn't part of the management team. From what I had learned, she was very picky about who she let into her life. She obviously had a close relationship with her family, an inner circle, which she invited me into. She loved to dance and drink, so she was sociable, as was I. Carrie had a great personality but was cautious. Because of this, I had more questions than answers. For example, she seemed more educated than the position she was working in. This gave the impression that something else was going on. I went to bed humming, "Hey Carrie Ann, what a game." Knowing what I would have to face on Monday, I arranged for an assistant to run the bar until I got my personal life sorted out. Mandy came over in Jack's truck to help me pack her sister's personal belongings. She stopped by the packing supply store so we could do it right. We started with the master bedroom. While I unfolded and taped up the boxes, she started going through the dresser drawers. Caleb, I can't believe what my sisters are doing. Mandy replied. I never approved of it and never said anything because I thought she would wise up. When my dad told me about your message, I broke down and told him the truth. I've only known about it for a month. He took it as a personal failure. In his opinion, it was his fault because he didn't raise her right. I think my mom feels the same way. Mandy, my emotions haven't gone away yet. The night Melody texted you, I found out about it. It happened by accident. I went to the bars to see how the competition was going. That's the only reason I took the picture. I was starting to build a case to confront her, I explained. I didn't expect it to turn out this way, and I'm sorry. Damn, didn't you tell her the bar was broken into and that it was closed? She asked. Yes, I did. But in hindsight, I'd say she heard but didn't listen, I stated. I should have realized that this was her way of telling me that our marriage was dead. Melody was always protected by our father, as was I, Mandy said. I had to become a parent myself to realize the sacrifices he made. I try to instill that quality in my children. Melody, even when she was little, never recognized right and wrong. She always has been, and always will be. I can't say I wish I'd seen it sooner. I think about your mom and dad too often, I said. Not many people can say their father-in-law is one of their best friends. When Mandy got to her sister's intimate parts, she asked for sewing scissors, which I quickly found. Before removing Melody's underwear, she cut out her crotch. The bras she cut between the cups. She must have been sending her sister a message. All the ruined items were thrown into a box. I was glad she did that because I couldn't. It took us about 4 hours to finish about half of it. I asked her if she would let me take her out to lunch before we went back to work. She agreed and took me to a new Chinese restaurant called Yumi's that had a variety of dishes she was excited to try. I'll be honest, I was very impressed with the quality and selection of dishes for the price. We got there just as the lunch crowd was dispersing and caught Payne on his way out. With 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and swollen lips, he looked rough. My father-in-law tagged him well. Oh my God, Mandy said in surprise. My father did that to him. It takes 2 months for it to heal. I was told by an eyewitness that your father only hit him 3 times before they jumped up and stopped him, I said. From the looks of Payne, my dad still has a hell of a punch. Mandy looked at me in surprise. If they hadn't stopped him, would Payne be in the hospital? I don't know, I said as I got out of the car. As we pulled up to the entrance of the restaurant, Payne came out from around the corner and said, Mandy, please unblock Melody. She really needs to talk to you. Payne, have you met my brother-in-law Caleb? She replied. I stepped forward. Payne's face went dead white because he realized it was me driving Melody's car. He raised his fist as if preparing for a fight. If that's the way you want it, Payne, fine. Mandy will confirm that he started the fight, I said. As soon as she said she would, I lifted my foot and kicked him hard in the balls. When he fell over in pain, I punched him with redoubled force with my fists. I punched him as fast and hard as I could several times. When he collapsed completely, I kicked him as hard as I could and punched him in the balls again. To top it off, I kicked him hard on his right arm. I didn't realize it, but it gave me the release I needed. I opened the door for Mandy and we headed inside. We were escorted to our seats. I ordered an unsweetened tea and she ordered a Coke. Before we go get our food, I want to ask, did my dad teach you those moves? Mandy asked. I replied, no. Come to think of it, part of my job is to be a bouncer when needed. That's why I asked you to witness that he started it. I didn't want a fair fight. I wanted to end it quickly. No sooner had Mandy and I filled our plates than the phone rang. It was Melody. She finally wanted to talk, but I didn't and just pressed the red phone on the screen to disconnect the call. Looks like her boyfriend already called her, I said. Too bad he's not going to give her anything anytime soon. Mandy lost her composure and started laughing uncontrollably. Everyone looked at her. I said out loud that I would never joke with her in public again. God, that was funny. I almost peed my pants, Mandy said. I'm glad you didn't. I replied, how would you have explained it to Jack? I would have been tempted to yell flood. Stop it, she said, starting to laugh again. After eating, we went back to work and continued until we were done. I packed all those feminine things a woman adds to a house to make it her own. At 5 o'clock, we unloaded Jack's huge cargo van at the storage center at the place we had rented for her. I had to pay the security deposit and the first month's rent, but the landlord agreed to keep the keys until she came to get them. I texted her to let her know what my sister and I had done. I got a call from the insurance company about an offer from the guy who hit me. I knew it was low, so I said I didn't want to take the money, but they should replace the truck with a car with the same mileage or less that had been commercially inspected. I did this because the insurance company will automatically pick the cheapest option. That way, getting the truck back better than new would cost them thousands. When we got back to my place, Carrie and Susan were already waiting for us. I introduced them to Mandy as her sister Melody's coworkers. I invited them all into the house. Mandy called Jack and let him know what was going on so he wouldn't worry. Now we were all sitting around drinking beer. We just came by to see how you were doing, Carrie said, and to see if you wanted to join us for dinner. It wasn't a good day at work for some, Susan said. Payne was in serious condition in the morning and went into the hospital in the afternoon. He never came back from lunch. Melody was looking for an apartment during lunch. I wish I could feel sorry for both of them, Mandy said. We spent the day moving Melody's things into storage. Caleb let me pack her underwear, which I successfully handled so that all her future lovers would have easy access. I informed the corporation via email why there was a problem with Payne and Melody's corporate cars, Carrie Ann stated. I attached a nice picture of Payne's face, saying that this is what happened when Melody's father caught them. I added that office romances are not allowed, let alone long-term affairs. You hate my sister that much? Mandy asked. No, I hate her behavior. I realize you might think that because of what I did, said Carrie. I grew up in a family where we were responsible for our actions. If we did something good, we were praised. If we did something bad, we paid for it. I just think they got away with it for too long. I got a call from the bar and excused myself to take the call. Later that evening, Carrie told me what I had missed. Carrie Ann, how long have you been in love with Caleb? Mandy asked seriously. The first night we met, when he found out about his wife's romantic interest, I watched him hold back his anger until he stopped. Carrie said, instead of confronting her in public, he went outside and let the air out of her tires. I caught him. I could see his pain even though he was trying to hide it. He asked me to wait in his rental car because he didn't want me to get caught with him. He was ready to go to jail for his behavior, but he didn't want to take me with him. In that moment, I realized he was different. That night we talked, he wasn't swearing, he wasn't belittling her. He was just trying to figure out how to get evidence to gently break the news to his father-in-law about why Melody didn't want to have children with him. Caleb has always been special, Mandy explained. In relationships with other people, he seems to be able to step into their shoes. In family problems, he's always acted as the peacemaker. He's hurting, but he won't admit it to anyone. I bless you, but if you hurt him, I will come after you. When your father caught Melody in pain and lost it, I was surprised when I found out he came here to be with Caleb, Carrie explained. Did you know that your father was the one who sent the text that ruined their marriage forever? No, I didn't. Thank you for telling me, Mandy replied. That explains why my parents didn't discuss our attempt to save their relationship. I stepped out and said, Mandy, call Jack and the kids and tell them to meet us at the bar. I just had the cook make shepherd's pie for all of us for dinner, including Susan and Carrie, so give me a minute to change. After tidying up, I returned and found Mandy gone and Susan waiting in the car. Carrie had cleaned up the beer bottles, throwing them in the trash can, and was busy wiping down the table. Thanks for doing that, I said. You're welcome. I like your sister-in-law. I think we'll end up being good friends, Carrie said. She thinks very highly of you, doesn't she? I think the same of her, I replied. At that moment, Carrie moved closer to me, wrapping her arms around me, raising her head. I responded in kind, lowering my head to share with her the first taste of what was to come. We walked out of the house holding hands and headed to the car. We both saw the smile on Susan's face. I'm sure she saw ours too. Carrie climbed into the front passenger seat and I moved to the back. It took you two quite a while, Susan said, to realize your attraction. You both moved slower than molasses. We're taking small steps until we get this mess sorted out, Carrie said. You know very well that when and if I get married, I want to be a stay-at-home mom when I have kids, with a husband who thinks like I do. We all pulled up to Baitia's house at the same time. Sure enough, Mandy and Jack's two kids ran up and grabbed my legs. The little angels had spent the day with their maternal grandmother. I walked into the bar holding a little girl in each hand. Jack swung the doors open in front of me. I heard Mandy tell Carrie that I'd make a great father. My daughters just adore him to death, she said. When they're really sick, he's the only one who can make them calm down and go to sleep. You can't imagine how many times I've asked him to come and do magic. I made a mental note to get a couple of bar stools. Mandy drove the service truck to the store her husband owned. The shepherd's pie got great reviews from everyone. Even the older Mandy liked it because she put it all over her face, which meant it was all over me because she sat on my knee. Carrie seemed to be focused on me and my niece. We were all served a dessert prepared by the chef. I laughed as Carrie finished her first glass and reached over to take a sip from mine. Tasting it, she was surprised that it was only ginger ale. You're cranky, she whispered. I laughed, then whispered in her ear. I had made a promise to myself that I would never drink alcoholic drinks in this bar before I opened it. And so far, I've kept it. I don't know what I said, but tears came to her eyes and she looked very proud. My assistant informed me that, as of 6 o'clock that evening, when the shift changed, bar sales were up 16% and food sales had passed 1,000 for the first time. When the ticket arrived, I pulled out my debit card to pay for it and handed the girl to Lynn Carey. Susan asked why I was doing this. Even though I own the business, it's still a business, I said. I want my employees to be honest, so I have to be honest too. By paying my bill like every other customer does, I let them know I won't tolerate it if they leave and don't pay theirs. A lot of people don't think that way, Carrie opined. But if you think about it, it makes sense. When the serving girl brought the papers, I added 20% as a tip and put the card back in my wallet. After saying goodbye, Susan and Carrie gave me a ride back to the house. It was time to check on the party Saturday night. Opening my email account, I discovered that what Carrie Ann had told me was true. The bartender at New City Jack's had sent me a 2-hour videotape of the night's events. It was professionally filmed from multiple angles. The video was called Surviving University Night and started with Melody Corbett and Payne Richards. The show is strictly for 2 players. When I opened the second and third files, I found copies of the contracts that both had signed, and their signatures were legally witnessed. They were now for sale on a paid adult website to which I had a link. The note said, "This should give you the negotiation tools you will need in your divorce." I went that route because it sells overseas and generates revenue every time it's shown. And I figured with your attitude you wouldn't mind. I didn't mind, and he was right. Melody would do anything to make sure her parents never saw it. I texted Carrie, "You have common sense." The movie about Melody and Payne's college night was posted on a paid adult site. I was disappointed by the lack of response until a while later when I heard a knock on the door. I had just finished showering and put on my pajamas. I opened the door half naked and wearing sandals. It was Carrie. And she was smiling broadly, but it wasn't Carrie, if you know what I mean. In less than 2 hours, she had lost at least 20 pounds from the bottom of her chest down. Come to think of it, she used to be a 10. Now she had to be a teenager by 5. Wow, was all I could say, being in complete shock. Who are you and what have you done to my Carrie Ann? You love it, Carrie replied. I've gotten rid of my body shapes for good. There are a few things I need to explain, and your message allows me to do that. Richard's Dental Supply Corporation has been under investigation for over 2 years, said Carrie Ann. I work for the FDA as one of their investigators. They put me inside undercover, so I had to make sure I didn't look like the woman Payne was after. Why? What? Said I in utter confusion. All the materials they sell to make false teeth and dentures are imported from China. We noticed that they were undercutting their prices in the market, and we needed to find out why. To do that, we needed to get in and do a forensic audit, Carrie Ann explained. It took so long because they used 3 different companies to hide the sources of the materials. Their search took the longest. Richards has been selling contaminated materials to unknown consumers for over a decade while making obscene profits. Most people who have bought plates made from his materials have lead permanently in their mouths. Payne has a history of stalking married women. I'm afraid Melody is his next victim. She'll wake up one day and realize he never loved her. She was just a whore he could use for his pleasure. That's when I came into your life, I said, and distracted you. So Susan is an agent too? Yes, I met her in my first year of university. We were both studying accounting, Carrie said. Before we go any further, I need you to get the video and any other information to my agent friend at the FBI. The bartender at New City Jack's was doing the same thing Melody and Payne did with the others. He's hoping your information will help him make a connection that will bring out the whole gang. We sent it together. I poured her a glass of white wine and got myself a cold lager. We were just talking when her cell phone rang. She said it was my mom. I asked if she wanted privacy and she said no. Putting it on speaker, I was surprised by her response. Hi, Mom. I see you finally got my message, Carrie said, smiling. Were you seriously texting that you're leaving the FDA? Her mom asked. Yes, Susan and I are finishing up our work here at the end of the week, but we will be working until we are fully settled, Carrie explained. We'll have to come back to testify, but we'll stay in town and start our own firm. Susan is moving in with me to cut costs until we get settled. For 6 years, we've insisted you settle down and stay in one place. Why now? Karis's mother asked. Why did you decide to settle near home? All right, Mother, laughed Carrie. You won't stop until I tell you. I met a man who interested me enough to make me wonder if he could be the one. Is this the Caleb you're talking about? Karis's mom asked. Mom, that's enough. Goodbye, Karis said and hung up the phone. Don't feel bad. Once the last child leaves home, all mothers start wanting grandchildren to fill the void created in their lives, I said. I have an appointment with a divorce attorney tomorrow. Susan and I are retiring from the Richards tomorrow. On Wednesday, the Food and Drug Administration will arrive with warrants and seizure orders. They want us both out before they find out. That way they can claim they got the information legally, even though they already know where to look. Carrie finally left around 1 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday, I made the insurance company pay for the rental car, and after picking it up, I went to the lawyers to start the process of filing for divorce. I was the first one in her office that day. She asked what proof I had, and I told her the whole story. She asked me to call my father-in-law, who agreed to come in and testify. I let her listen to the entire conversation. On top of the printouts from the Ramada Inn, that would be an added plus. If she agrees to what I am offering as compensation, have her and her attorney meet with us so we can show her what is on this stick. It shows what was created last Saturday night with their consent, I said. I even passed along an email that it was done. What makes you so sure she won't fight you when she sees it? My feminist layer asked. Take the stick home and watch a 2-hour movie alone. I'll keep the business, she gets the house. No support or anything, I said. And if she says no? She asked. Net. Then all family members on both sides will each get a copy of what I just handed you from an unknown email address, I said, getting up to leave. Caleb, she said, can you always be this dirty, stiff, and cold? Only when a person's behavior leaves me no choice, I replied. Come to think of it, she's the one who made me realize that the last 12 years of my life have been wasted. That remark struck my attorney as if she had just been stabbed with a sharp knife. Carrie and Susan did go to their employer's office to quit. Melody, as office manager, was shocked. They were leaving at the end of the day. Taking their places would not be easy. Payne was on the spot, but he was in a lot of pain. No one could say what happened, but his right hand was in a cast from wrist to first knuckles. Payne spent most of the day in his office answering phone calls from corporate headquarters. He knew the only reason he was still working was because of his family. He was given a small reprieve when he agreed to pay the cost of 2 company cars out of his own personal pocket. He was made to understand that he had to either marry the girl or fire her. He agreed to do the latter when her divorce was finalized. After parting ways with the lawyers, I went to a real estate broker I knew. I wanted to find out what office buildings were for sale in the area. One of them, he thought, could be a gold mine if the new owner could find a respectable anchor. It was located just 5 blocks from the Baitia store on Baitia. It was now owned by the bank I was dealing with. He said he thought the bank was tired of carrying it. With a little facelift, interior painting, and landscaping, the 3-story building could be cleaned up quickly and attract attention. After looking at it, I agreed. We went back to his office and put together a low-ball offer contingent on getting financing and inspection approval. I asked him if I could show the prospective client a space that I thought was perfect for him. He gave me the keys and told me to pick them up tomorrow. Around 2 in the afternoon, I texted Carrie. Susan and you can come by the bar. I need to show you both something. She quickly replied, sure. I called my father-in-law and asked if he had an hour or two free. He asked why. I explained that I was afraid I would have to sell the bar to settle the divorce case and I needed to start getting ready for a fresh start. I had an office building I was considering and I wanted his opinion. He agreed and I picked him up. We walked through the building checking out the electrical. He pointed out a few things that the building inspector wouldn't notice but could be used as trump cards. He asked what they were asking for. I told him and then told him what I suggested. Smart move. He said, you can always go up but you can't go down. Personally, I think you should go for it. You need a couple new anchors. Do you have someone in mind? I replied, just 2 ladies who are starting their own accounting firm and are now working with me and Melody since I may be forced to sell Baitia. He smiled and said, if you buy it, I'll help you remodel the space so the 2 of you can work in it. It's bigger than your current one. Plenty of room for parking. Mandy tells me you're friends with them. She thinks they're good people. Thanks, Dad, I said. Do you really think Melody will claim your business in the divorce? My father-in-law asked. The Melody I knew before probably not, but the one I'm divorcing will, I replied. She'll blame me for everything that happens in her life to justify her actions. Dad looked at me in shock. But that's not true. You and I know that other things happen. I replied, name one situation other than a legal contract where the truth would matter in making a decision. I can't, and neither can you. In divorce courts, it all depends on what you can get the judge to believe. If Melody and I had children, I'd be a dead man in the eyes of any judge. But that's wrong, he said. Dad, we agree with you, but we're in the minority. We still believe in right and wrong. These days, most outside the family only care about themselves. The times when society was beneficial as a whole are forever gone, I replied. The proof of that is to look at how many people are homeless in the promised land of California. For most people, reality is what the media presents to them on a given day, and that lasts about as long as it lasts. I was back at the bar in my office when my realtor friend called to let me know that they had accepted the offer but would not finance it, even though I was a good client. I started looking for financing through lendingtree.com. I sent them my tax returns for the last 5 years to show them I was serious. Susan, Carrie, and I walked through the empty first floor of the building I wanted to buy. It had last been used as a call center. I told them about the plans for the new bar and restaurant I had in mind, and then asked how much office space they would need. Caleb, we can't afford what it will cost to finish the space, so we're looking for something ready to move in, Susan said. Say, I've already decided that I'll take care of all the costs and build as the bar is set up. By Friday, I'll know if I have financing. I'll get the building for much cheaper than its appraised value. I said, Melody's dad will help with the construction, so that will cut down on a lot of the costs. Why are you doing this? Carrie asked. Because the divorce court may force me to sell Baitia on Baitia as part of the divorce settlement, so I'm planning accordingly, I answered honestly. So in the next couple days, put your needs for the next 2 years on paper. I'll work on it from there. What if you don't have to sell the bar? Susan asked. My assistant will be promoted, and I'll have 2 operations, I said. Wednesday was a bad day for Payne, Melody, and his parents. The Food and Drug Administration showed up, visiting all their regional offices and headquarters en masse. Melody was served with a copy of my divorce petition on grounds of adultery. On Friday, Melody and Payne flew out to Richard's headquarters. The deal was finalized on Friday. I was able to knock out an extra $250,000 for the remodel. We started gutting the insides. On the first floor, we tore down and stripped everything down to concrete walls and bare bones. Thanks to the concrete floors and steel framing, it didn't take long. During this time, our draftsman drew up detailed interior plans for the entire building. He redesigned the main entrance to include an elevator shaft for 3 floors. The contractors ran new plumbing for my section and Carrie and Susan's office, making 2 main entrances, one from the street and one from the main lobby. I had to cut and remove concrete so that a new elevator shaft could be installed and poured. At the same time, I built an interior concrete wall to provide permanent separation. Carrie and Susan flew to Washington every Sunday night and returned Friday night. They would stay until I completed the construction. I would pick them up and take them to the airport. Both helped out when they could. My soon-to-be ex's lawyer and my lawyer got nowhere. Every week her demands changed, and finally I said enough was enough and set up a meeting between the 4 of us. I was ready and angry enough to go for blood. When the shaft was ready and the elevator was launched into the building, I ordered it sandblasted. This removed the paint, returned the building to its original color, and freshened up the red brick to look like new. The team redid the flat roof, bringing it up to modern standards. Finally, interior finishing could begin. Her office would have men's and women's restrooms, an employee lunchroom, a beautiful reception area, and 6 offices. On my side would be public restrooms, a pantry behind the kitchen and bar, a suitable elevated area for the band with a good dance floor. Contractors came in to do the interior finishing. They did their part in less than 2 weeks. 2 other office buildings were purchased in the neighborhood. Those 2 buildings were sold and turned into the newest branch of Bank of America. The local paper said that redevelopment was coming to a neighborhood that was more than ready for it. My meeting with the ex and her attorney was scheduled for Friday. The kitchen equipment had already been delivered and set up on the white tile floor. An oak bar counter had been built and dark pine laminate flooring had been laid. All the electrics were in place and working on both sides. The tables, chairs, and booths for the restaurant had already been ordered and would be delivered on Monday. We did it all in less than 2 full months. My real estate agent found me a long-term tenant. The legal team took the entire 2nd and 3rd floors. It turned out that they took care of the mortgage, taxes, and all the associated costs. I went to the meeting with the lawyer and saw that Melody was starting to show herself. She wanted me to step up and take on the responsibility of being a father. I listened to her claims and laughed when she claimed she was still on the pill when it happened. I told her we would do a DNA test to prove or disprove your claim. I then asked my attorney to show her what was on the stick I gave her. Melody's face turned white. Last time I looked, there were over 2 million hits, each one costing $5.99 apiece. I said, according to your contract, you are entitled to 5%. Since we were legally married at that point, all proceeds you receive for this night's adventure will belong to me equally, because it must also be listed as marital property. Now, I will give you the weekend to offer me a serious agreement that we can both live with. I said, otherwise everything I have on this disc will become public on Tuesday. There was a sepulchral silence in the room. Melody, we both know who the father of your child is, and his name is Payne, I said, getting up to walk out the door. You made your choice, accept the consequences, and live with them. 10 minutes passed before my divorce attorney called. Caleb, she's offering you $350,000. You get to keep your business and your house. You must agree to never divulge or discuss what you know and give up all your movie rights. Draw up a settlement agreement, but stipulate that you must hold the funds for me before I sign it, I replied. How soon will the divorce be finalized? I'll set a court date right now, but it will become legal 30 days after the judge signs it. I was dressed in my last clothes and waiting for Carrie and Susan as they disembarked the small regional jet. My hands were busy because I was holding 2 sets of roses. The red ones were for Carrie and the yellow ones were for Susan. As Carrie walked through the gate, she saw me and broke out into a huge smile. As soon as they approached me, I handed them the roses. Both of them kissed my check. We got their luggage and I pulled them towards the new sedan I had finally bought, having gotten cash I could live with. Before we take you home, I want to stop by and show you your finished offices. I think you should know that the rest of the building is rented by a group of lawyers, I said. Carrie and I have reached a financial agreement on my marital assets that will be approved by the court next week. How much did you lose? Carrie asked. Is it as bad as we feared? Oh yes, very bad, I laughed. We had a meeting with our lawyers and I got her video and a printout of how much she made. I said that since one side was forcing us to agree to consider all assets as marital property, her earnings from the one-night stand video should be included too. Since it was filmed while we were married, 50% of the income due her should belong to me as well. Carrie cried with relief. Now we can officially date. As a result of that and the threat I made by the end of the day, I get my business, my house, and $350,000 on top of that, I explained. She has a week to move any furniture she wants out of the house. What are you going to do with the house? Carrie asked. Nah. I'm going to sell it because I don't think the lady I fell in love with will want past memories to get in the way of her. Tears of joy ran down Carrie's cheek. Caleb, you're still as slow as molasses in January. It took you over 2 months to say what I knew the night we met Mandy and her family, Susan stated. But when you do it right. Even Susan, usually more reserved, cried when they saw their finished offices, which were now available for use. The use of oak and pastel colors made the space warm and very professional. All that's left is to give the business a name and register it, and buy the office equipment and furniture, I said with a smile. You ladies picked the colors well. Caleb Corbett, Carrie said, jumping into my arms. I love you. Damn it, you made me wait so long before you told me you felt the same way. No more holding back. Good. I just nodded my head, pressed my mouth to hers, and gave her a long-awaited, deep erotic kiss with an exchange of tongues. Finally, we took Susan to Carrie's house where they both now lived. It was the first time Carrie had ever driven home with me. We spent several hours figuring things out and completely opening up to each other. We went to our favorite parking lot to have breakfast. Then I took her to Gerard's to look at rings. From cheap to the most expensive, she saw one she really liked, but walked away when she saw the price. I asked the salesman to bring it back so she could try it on. I went and brought it back. Carrie put it on her finger. It fit. While she admired it, I handed the salesman my debit card. Carrie said, "Stop, it's too much for something I'll only wear for a few months. You can put it in your jewelry box and give it to our oldest daughter when she turns 16, I replied in a firm voice. Even the salesperson had tears in her eyes as she processed the sale. Of course, the first person she called was Susan. We agreed to meet at the Baitia restaurant on Baitia at 6 o'clock. I told her that she should invite her mother and father to join us. She did. They wanted to meet the man who had finally convinced their free souls to return home. I called Daniel, my former father-in-law, and his wife. Yes, I always called them Mom and Dad, to invite them to visit. Both said they would love to come. I informed them that Melody and I had come to an agreement and that the divorce would be decided the following week. I found out that Payne and Melody announced their engagement in a text message a week ago because they still hadn't spoken. I contacted Mandy and asked her to bring the whole family. I called my chef and asked if he could cook something special and explained why. He said he would make a traditional Irish thick lamb stew with fresh cedar cookies and add his own twist to it. He asked the bartender to serve Irish coffee with plenty of fresh cream for everyone but me. Unexpectedly, he ordered a separate table at the back of the room so we could have some privacy. Daniel and Mary, my in-laws, showed up first. This allowed me to introduce Carrie to them first. The biggest surprise was for Carrie and me. Her parents, Bob and Rosanna Lasher, were well-known relatives. Daniel seemed to keep them in the loop on every detail when they were at work. When Jack and Mandy came along, the little ones immediately rushed to me. At their ages of 4 and 3, they hugged me tightly. I leaned over and took them both in my arms. Carrie held out her arms and the younger ones went to her. Over a huge dinner, we informed everyone that Carrie had gotten her ring. Everyone was shocked at its size. When Carrie explained how it happened and my reaction, her mom tried not to cry but couldn't. Even the relatives expressed their approval to us. They were confused when Carrie told them it was okay if I called you mom and dad. Cale made it clear that you will always be mom and dad to him. As usual, the food was exceptional. When my ticket was brought to me, Carrie's dad snatched it up and said that this ticket was on me. I wanted to say something, but I felt a kick to my shin and didn't have time. When everyone left except her parents, we told them our whole story down to the smallest detail. I want to ask you, Cale, if you don't mind me asking, we've all but you have had Irish coffee more than once. Don't you drink it? Bob asked. I laughed. Carrie smiled. Papa Cale doesn't drink at any establishment he owns. Never has and never will. That's a promise he made before he even built this establishment, Carrie explained. It's his way of keeping himself in check and setting an example for his employees. So your establishment is of the upper class, is it not? He said with a laugh and a smirk, then added, I think it's the only establishment I consider good enough for my daughter, my friend. We brought them here so they could see the layout and design of her new office, and it gave us a chance to talk while the woman gave the royal tour. He was impressed with the quality of the work, the overall design, and the colors. I could tell that as a father he was very proud. Daniel sees you as the son he never had. Says you are a man who stands up for your principles better than ever, said Karis's father. I don't mean to say that Daniel is the father I never had. I grew up in a poor family without a father. He left before they were even married. My mother couldn't have a relationship with another man, so she raised me and my sister alone, I said. I met him because of Melody. He was as tough and hard as I was, street smart and libidinous, but he never backed down. Daniel always stood his ground when necessary. I learned a lot from him, like the fact that a real man is strong. In every way, he is my father, not by inheritance, but by choice. The moral principles and standards I carry within me came about because of him. I can honestly and proudly say that I became who I am because of him. We stood like that until the ladies returned, and then Carrie's father spoke. Carrie, the only thing your mom and I can say based on what we have been told and what we have learned. We approve of your choice and would be honored to consider him our son, he said. So welcome to Caleb's family. He held out his hand and I shook it. Carrie told me later that she was in complete shock because her father had never approved of anyone else before. We spent the night together. It was sad to see her go back. Both Susan and Carrie wanted to leave the FDA on good terms. On Monday, I put the house on the market. Wednesday, I signed the divorce agreement and got the money she held in a trust. On Friday, I sat in court and watched the judge issue the divorce decree. Melody never bothered to show up. I picked up my companion from Baitia's on Baitia and took him to the new bar. He liked the layout and the kitchen. The city council had given us all the necessary permits. It was a sports bar taken to the extreme. All that was left was to give it a name. Charlie, you've been with me from the beginning. Will you agree to leave the Baitia and take over this establishment as general manager? I asked. Yes, of course I agree, he replied cheerfully. $75,000 a year. I said, with a 10% bonus each year based on net income. Charlie was shocked. He had just gotten the biggest promotion of his life. If he played it right, he could see how much faith I had in him. What are we going to call it? He asked. Charlie's Bar and Grill. It was 3 years after the divorce. The accounting firm of Corbett and Sullivan had become a huge success. Charlie's Bar and Grill has become a local favorite. Melody and Payne go to divorce court where she catches him in the company of his best friend. Her family still wants nothing to do with them. I just experienced the worst day of my life. I didn't realize my wife Carrie had so many names for me. Every time she went into a difficult labor, I would get a new name. The twins were born within 20 minutes of each other. First a girl was born, then a boy. Both had Carrie's fiery red hair. Both relatives were in Carrie's room when we announced their names. Daniel Robert and Rosemary Ann. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.